The next cube, titled Building a Bigger, Broader Creative Class, brings together faculty and students from the School of Social Work, School of Music, Theater, and Dance, and the Penny Stamp School of Art and Design. Please welcome Professors Larry Gant, Priscilla Lindsay, and Nick Tobier.
Good morning. I have a question for you. How many of you in this auditorium would consider yourselves to be creative? Raise your hands. Aha. How many of you, when I asked that question, thought about a particular artist, perhaps a Picasso or a Jesse Norman, someone who had the luck to be born under the rings of Saturn or struck by lightning by some rare, demonstrable talent? Let's talk about widening the definition of creativity. How many of you would put yourselves in one of these categories? Raise your hands. And by bohemians, we're referring to the Pablos and the Jessies of the world, not a particular region of Europe. And it looks like a lot of you confess that creativity, meaning imagination, ingenuity, inspiration, resourcefulness, however you define it, is a part of your personality, your temperament, and your nature. How many of you fit into this category, these categories at the bottom? Go ahead.
40% of Ann Arbor self-identifies as creative. That's 10% above the national average of 30, and it's right about where New York City and Los Angeles find themselves now. That national average of 30%, by the way, has risen 10% over the last decade, which shows that there's at least a rising self-identification of creative fields. And what does that mean to us? What does it look like, and really, why do we care who's creative? It's because over and over, creative places are the places that people want to live, places that enable people to define their life's work as creating new meaning, to face a certain quality of life, to have agency in the ways that their places live and work, and all come together in streets that look like this.
But what about streets that look like this? This is in the Brightmoor neighborhood in Detroit. Or places like this. This is Calumet in the Upper Peninsula. That 30% creative population is not evenly distributed across the country. The areas with the highest and lowest creative populations, they follow the uneven distribution of wealth, of access to information, education, and resources that divide our country along race and class lines. Now, our group is looking specifically at places, neighborhoods in Detroit and small towns in the Upper Peninsula where less than 1% of the population identifies as creative.
What if the folks in this auditorium made up, a community or a neighborhood in Southeast Detroit, or even a small town in the Upper Peninsula? There are about 300-400 of you. What if in the past 3 or 4 decades, the young people in your town, when they reached the age of 17 or 18, left? What if some of you are grandparents, retired, out of work? What if the rest of you are young children, babies, and kids who are ready for preschool and elementary school education? What if the major source of income in your town has left? They've boarded up, they've dried up, they've moved away, and they've been gone for about 20 years. And all that's left are vacant buildings, empty lots, boarded up businesses, 7-Elevens, liquor stores, and Dollar Trees. Why is it important to nurture creativity in such a depressing, no-win situation?
We set out looking for what we described as creative opportunities, where something could happen, a co-working space, a theater, a place to gather, a workshop, and we found loads of them. This is a vacant theater, became a dollar store. It's on Verner Avenue in Southwest Detroit. This is one of many vacant commercial buildings in Munising in the Upper Peninsula. This place, by the way, is for sale. It's just outside of Paradise in the Upper Peninsula. It's a creative opportunity waiting to happen, and if you buy it, you can keep the name or change it. It's up to you.
So what's wrong with these people? Why can't they see these opportunities? What was a gap between creative populations and high-density creative cities and these places, the Brightmoors, the Munisings? Well, from our research and our interview notes and questions, we sought out honest, gut responses to these questions. And over, we heard this. I want a voice. I want a voice in my life, in the way I spend my day, and in the way my community sees me, and in the way my community sees itself. You know, agency rather than occupation characterize and define the responses. And so creativity was not only about having ideas, but the capacity and the confidence to implement them.
By the way, Nick got the idea to explore and explode this idea of a bigger, broader creative class by articulating a third narrative of community-based creative work, weaving disparate intergenerational threads of potentially fraying social fabrics into a sense of belonging rather than displacement, building a creative class from within. Nick and Larry had worked together on a number of community engagement projects in the past years, and I met Larry in a similar engagement in Detroit a couple years ago.
Each of us is a catalyst for creativity in our own ways, and I had long admired Larry's ability to use social work as a way to look at the world and use arts as a primary language and a tool for addressing communities.
Nick has a gift for talking with people. And Nick is all about, and has always been about, people realizing their creativity to make a difference in their communities. And our dear friend Priscilla always asks the big clarifying questions. And she was the one who would always see the big picture.
In the communities we visited and the people we talked to and the research we conducted, we encountered a decidedly creative population that does not identify primarily as creative. The same self-identification questions that we asked you don't get the same responses. But within that population, for instance, are the bakers at La Gloria in Southwest Detroit, and in that same neighborhood, an incredible collective of women welders. In the Upper Peninsula, in Sault Ste. Marie, we met a beverage store owner who had painted these benches, these picnic tables, this bright red, he said, to set off the color against the gray stone of the adjacent buildings, especially in a March day when there was no sunlight. A convenience store in Trout Lake, also in the Upper Peninsula, that had built this covered picnic area out back by their ice machine, where we see a potential concert venue in the near future. Working with our cultural planning partners, City Lab in Pittsburgh, we started working more and more towards ideas of integration rather than gentrification, where the creatives, the artists, the inventors, the CEOs, the software developers become integrated into a community rather than gentrifying it. Where statistically we've found that if you can achieve a 6% population that identifies as creative, that community can tilt towards greater community resiliency, engines of their own economic advantage, and creating that agency for everybody within the community.
School of Social Work, along with partners in LSA and El Museo del Norte in Southwest Detroit, we were invited to form a settlement house called the Boulevard House. And we were invited by the residents of Southwest Detroit to be there. And we partner with a number of community organizations, such as People's Community Services. And we offer cultural programming in the neighborhood. And in doing so, we collaborated with Nick and students during the summer to build this adjacent structure in the summer of 2014. Now, this past summer, in addition to the structure, we also had performance artists, Tomas and his Mariachi band, that were playing in front of the Boulevard House. And Maria de la Flor Walker also led in that construct, a day of music and food and Papo Picado.
Our aspirations for a broader creative class say that if we can integrate creative thinking into all our lives, we can creatify all of our occupations. And that's not just those lists that we saw at the beginning. We recognize that it takes an enormous amount of energy to create a generator. So we don't in any way think of our work as generating this creative class. Rather, we think of it as a transformer. And that all that creative energy, all those creative occupations are out there. And if we serve as a transformer, we can harness that existing energy and transmit it to a larger community.
So Sonia and others, we're looking at how residents on the ground interface with new arrivals through incredible precedent projects such as Houston's Third Ward project, row houses. And in these row houses, artists are integrated as neighbors in a residential neighborhood of shotgun houses. Lenny, who you don't see here, but you see his work, is a welder that we met at a flea market parking lot in Southwest Detroit. Very popular, very well known. Everybody knows where it is in Southwest Detroit. And Lenny makes these incredible grills that fuse lots of creativity and innovation with the manufacture and the redesign of 55-gallon steel drums. This October, our structure moves from the Boulevard House that you saw a few slides ago to the same market in Southwest Detroit, where we have an opportunity to actually showcase the neighborhood creatives.
Our first exhibit, which opens October 25th, by the way, is entitled "You're the Cookie to My Heart." And there you can see the images of each neighborhood bakery's self-identified favorite cookie. There'll be one of the bakers on hand to inscribe the hearts, so if you have something you'd like to say, please come by. And if we can be aspirational in the next phase of our work, if we can creatify the service economy, all those categories and all those jobs that you don't see listed, whether it's food service workers or home health care workers, it's a broader call for an open-mindedness for all of us to help create the conditions in which creativity can thrive so that our communities can address together some of the seemingly intractable problems that have to do with homelessness, to generation of wealth and income, to the resiliency that comes from feeling that you have a voice and agency. And if we can do so, then we have indeed created an incredible opportunity.
Ordinary people can make extraordinary things happen if given the chance. Creativity is an applied imagination where it's not only artists and those involved in the creative economy who are creative, but folks from any source who address issues using inventive ideas. And by encouraging and legitimizing the use of imagination, the ideas bank, the treasure trove of possible solutions and potential to any problem will be naturally broadened. And now, one more show of hands. How many of you think you are creative? Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you to MCubed.